welcome to Books and Brew. I'm your host, Andrew Huff. I'm a novelist, screenwriter, director, all-around media producer. And this show is all about sitting down with fellow authors, getting to know their writing secrets so I can steal it for my own success. Now, here's the thing I know about writers is when we write, we love to have a beverage with us. And often that comes in the form of coffee or tea. And so while we get to know these authors, get to know their books and what it takes to be a writer, I get to try their favorite writing brew right along with them. So let's meet today's guest and find out what I am going to be drinking. Buck Storm is an award-winning author and musician whose stories have found friends around the world. Welcome to the show, Buck.
Hey, thanks, Andrew. Nice to be here. That was so smooth, man. You're so smooth.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, which this was how I was going to start our conversation. I've scoured the internet for an in-depth biography of Buck Storm.
Yeah.
And that was the best I could do in the intro.
Yeah.
You're in Idaho. That's the other thing I know. So, dude, I've had like paragraphs sometimes I'm giving of an author intro, but that was easy.
Yeah. I hate bios, man. I just can't stand them. I'm an old dog. I've been around forever, and there's a lot of stuff out on the internet, but shorter the better, right. I mean, come on. Yeah.
Well, that's actually a good thing good point that I haven't really dove into with another author at this point, but in terms of maybe you and I could even tackle this because you have to write a bio for yourself. And there's so much more. People often think, oh, the writer, he wrote the book and there you go. He's going to publish the book. But when it comes to what else we're writing that goes along with the book, there's a lot. And the bio can be just as frustrating to write as anything. And so we could definitely talk for a while probably about writing the bio, writing the back cover copy, right? Which, publishers can also adjust and come up with stuff as well. But often they have you writing sort of the first draft. So a lot of those things. So.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. The dreaded synopsis.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Just somebody hit me in the head with a bat. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Well, before we jump into all that, because we could definitely go on, I want to know what your favorite writing brew is. What am I going to be drinking today?
So I'm boring, man. I'm a black coffee guy. I drink a lot of black coffee, and I do live up here in Idaho in the great Northwest in the land of flannel shirts and really good coffee. So this is a friend of ours who's a roaster, Spencer, and it's called Wilder Coffee, and you're going to love it. It's good stuff. Yeah, you're smelling
all right.
it now.
Hey, here we go. So I got my fridge press here. I've been showing it off. It's very stylish.
That is nice.
But I've got the coffee in here. Got the water in here. It's going to brew for 5 minutes. And that, Buck, is your timer to pitch us your books. Tell us about your books and why we should rush out and buy them right now.
Okay. Well, you just read my bio, man. So you think I have a whole full 5 minutes to fill just talking about my books? That's like a sentence.
Yeah.
So I write what the publishers fondly call literary Americana for the most part, which is I think is a nice industry way of saying that I don't color probably inside the lines, and they can't quite clarify it. So some years ago, I've been a musician. You mentioned for years and years, a touring musician, and I've always wanted to be a writer. In fact, when my wife and I first got married back in the early 1900s, and we got put in application for our first apartment, I actually lied on the application and said writer, figuring, hey man, it's only going to be a few months and I'm going to be like Hemingway, right? So It took me about 20 years plus to come out with my first novel, and
wow.
So I like to write. I'm a horrible planner, but my books, the books we're probably talking about mostly are the Ballads of Paradise series that I've got with Kriegel right now. I just finished the third. The first one was called The Beautiful Ashes of Gomez.
Just to clarify, you finished writing it, right? It's going to come out?
Yeah. Oh, I finished the third recently and sent it in. So it's in edits right now. So it'll be out next year.
So 1 and 2 are out.
1 and 2 are out.
Third's coming. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for that. See, that's why you're the host. So I've seen a couple of your things, and man, people on here are so smart. They're like these great authors. I'm going, man, how far into this is he going to figure out that I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing, making the whole thing up as I go? But so American literary Americana. This series takes place in a little town, mostly in a little town in northern or eastern Arizona, up in the mountains, and called Paradise. The way I write books essentially is I'll have kind of a premise for a scene, and I'll think, well, that's an interesting scene, an interesting what if,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'll write that chapter, and then that'll eventually turn into a book. I'm a horrible planner. I don't plot. I don't go with scenes. The game changers. None of that really. So these are kind of in-depth character, lots of dialogue, very human in my mind, very human books. Kind of small town life, but they also, The Sound the Sun Makes in particular is kind of a road trip novel. So it takes place in not only in Arizona, but also in LA and Santa Barbara, and then down in Mexico a little bit. But so I tend to write somewhat over the top characters, I guess you would say. Some people think they're too over the top. Some people love them. I just write what I write, people either dig it or they don't. But so I think, in fact, I just got off a radio interview before this, and I was talking with the host on that a little bit about theme, which I'm horrible at describing theme. It's, we write in the Christian market here. We're all supposed to have this glorious theme that we start off with, and we're going to teach everybody a lesson through our brilliant fiction, right? So that's not me. But here's what I will say about my books, that I hope. Okay, this is what I hope, that in my life I've walked for many years through had a lot of mountaintops, and I've had a lot of valleys that were pretty dark. And through the whole thing, through all this crazy life I've lived, the love of God has really pressed in, relentlessly and sometimes violently. This is the God I serve, and the God that I hope the love of this God comes through in my writing. So I think that's the theme in these books, is that it's that no matter who you are, no matter how rough around the edges you might be, that the love of God will chase you down. It'll get you in a headlock. It'll take you to the mat, and it will insist, and that's what I think my books, the people that love my books, I think that's what they get out of them. Those are the letters that I get. So I don't know, how are we doing on time? Do we have a timer going or something? I saw you had timers.
I do. We've got probably a minute left. It's not as technical and scientific as you might think, but
okay. Yeah.
There is a timer below us that is shipping pretty close to where it needs to be. So
well, let me just step back and say that these 3 books for Kriegel, this is, the book I just finished is my 8th book. So I did have some books before that, all novels, essentially, mostly literary Americana. 2 of the novels are his biblical fiction, historical, take place during the time of Christ. Had some great ministry and success with those books. Some great reviews and great endorsements from like Josh McDowell and Dr. Dave Reagan, who's right down the road from you in Dallas, was on his show a couple of years ago. And these books they're called The List and the Light. You're looking at the timer, I can tell. So they're like The List and the Light. And they're essentially the purpose to write those with a lot of input from a lot of scholars was to write a fictional account of Christ's ministry that was absolutely biblically, culturally, and historically accurate from the perspective of Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea, the 2 guys that came together to take Jesus off the cross at the end of Jesus's Christ story on earth. Trying to talk fast now. So that, and then I did write one nonfiction book that's been really fun. That's it's published with Hachette Book Group, and it's basically about as a musician, I've had the blessing to bounce all over the world a lot. And so I've been in Israel many, many times. And so this is it's a book of basically short stories about off the beaten path Israel, behind the scenes Israel. And so that's been really cool. A lot of fun to see that get out and kind of touch people's lives. It's been neat. Much more than it's funny how you, as a writer, you look at these and go, man, that's touching somebody a heck of a lot better than I write. So, God's hand has to be in it, Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're going to dive into a lot of that. But your 5 minutes is up. Masterful, John. I know that you were like, hey, I'm not going to be able to do it, but I could
have done so much better, man. So much better.
It was great. So we're going to press this down, and then we're going to, now I already mentioned, that normally I have a coffee cam. So for those of you who have watched Books and Brew before, you get to see the coffee pour. But we had some technical difficulties with this earlier, and so I don't have the coffee cam for today. But I'm gonna hold it up. We're gonna see the color of this thing when I pour it. So here we go.
We don't even know you're really pouring it. It
Yeah,
could
I
be
know, right?
empty. Could be like one of those Hallmark coffee cups where there's nothing in it. You can tell.
I should also probably. Oh man, that smells really good. I should also probably, when I do these, figure out what everybody's coffee to water ratio is. But I just do my normal. Because I've definitely had times where an author would be like, "Oh, I just put Jamie Joe Wright. I just put some into it till I think it's good."
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm like,
I think mine's even less scientific than that.
All right, so
all right,
there it is. Looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, my review doesn't come till the end of the episode, and so everything that you are going to, you got to watch my face and try to figure out what I think.
I already know what you think. Right, go ahead.
You already know?
Yeah.
Here we go. Oh, yeah. And then sometimes, I always leave the first slurp in just so everybody can hear.
Oh, good.
That I'm actually drinking.
I can sip at the same time?
Yeah. Here we go. Yeah. Poker face.
Very good.
All right. Whew, I almost gave it away. I almost said what I thought. All right, here we go. So we have our brew.
Got our brew.
We've heard about your books. Let's talk about writing craft. So I have so many questions for you today. I don't want to keep you super long in this interview, but I think maybe one of the places that we can start, because you kind of brought this up in terms of your travels around the world, is the fact that you have a career as a musician. And so I feel like, and this seems pretty obvious from not just what you were saying, but also from what I've read about your stories, that your background as a musician heavily influences you as a writer. And so I'm curious about that, if that has been a natural thing or if that has been something that you're like, no, like, I have just, for whatever reason, maybe you did it without even thinking, or you were like, no, this is what I really want to write about. So talk about how that career as a musician sort of intersects with you as a fiction writer.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think I have an answer to it. So when I first decided to write a novel, I'd been writing songs for years and years and years. And I honestly thought that writing a novel would be like writing a really long song, and so I set out, and over the course of a few years, I actually did finish a novel that I thought was a novel. And I did realize pretty quickly that these are two very, very different crafts. I have, just being in the industry, kind of in the entertainment industry, somewhat. I had some friends that knew authors, and so I was connected with a wonderful, wonderful lady who offered to look over my book. Her name's Kimberly Woodhouse. You might know Kimberly, so I sent my book to her. This was years ago, and she was great. She called me and said, "Hey, Buck, you've got a good voice for writing," and then very gently said, "But you really can't write a book." And but she was so nice that she said, "But I'd really love to help you and give you some pointers and give you some tips and I've never been one to really take offense at anything. I mean, to me, it's like, let's make art the best we can make it. And so she really gave me some great coaching. I kind of put myself through school on the internet, bought everything I could find on writing, just loads of books on writing, and eventually kind of came up with a book that wound up getting a published. That was my first book, called The Miracle Man. And so in my mind, songwriting and prose, in a novel form, are pretty different. That being said, there is some crossover for me in that when you write a song, you have a few minutes to make your point. You know, it's sort of like writing a short story, but even shorter. Only way I can describe it is writing novels. You can take time, and what I think of it as is leaning back into the language. I mean, I can be poetic, but I don't have to be poetic so quickly. You know, with songs, you have to have those single lines that might say 3 or 4 different things, you know, in one line. You know, with books, you want some of those too. I mean, there were masters of that. Hemingway was a master. You read Hemingway's dialogue, and he's telling layers and layers of backstory in a few sentences of dialogue. You know, so you want that stuff if you can do it, if you can pull that off. You know, the really great writers can. You hope for it, but at the same time, you have so much more time to express your ideas, to express setting, to express feeling. You know, smell, hearing, you know, everything you have. So that being said, I would think they're 2 different things. At the same time, when I talk to musician friends of mine that have known me for years, they'll say that my books correlate along with my songwriting quite a bit, that they're somewhat rhythmic and, you know, in flow and that kind of thing. They see a lot of that songwriting in there. So it's really hard for me to see it. To me, they're so different. I love them both equally. In fact, I probably love the novel writing even more than I loved songwriting for years. And I was a passionate nut of an artist. I mean, I lived for it. So this is like, it's a special thing for me to get to do. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah,
I think the answer is I'm not really sure. I think that my friends of mine and colleagues of mine would have a little bit different answer than I would. But to me, I see them as just totally different disciplines.
Well, I mean, a good example of what I think, and maybe you can affirm if this is true or not, of what it might be like for you is how. So I trained to go into the ministry. I was in local church ministry for 10 years, did youth ministry and did creative ministry. And so much of what I write is informed by that experience and sort of the things that are rubbing off on me that I'm not even aware of. And so much of my writing is informed by that when I'm not even thinking about it, because that's just my experience. That's my background. And so I would think in some ways, and I would not be able to be able to go, oh, that's, you know, I wrote that because of my experience in ministry and knowing how to, you know, what people struggle with or whatever, and the ways to talk about it. But I would say the same thing. This is what I'm getting, at least from what you've said, is there's so many of those things that almost we're not even aware of that's going into our writing that someone else is going to like pick up on. Yeah, because they're like, oh, I noticed that. And it must be because you're a musician, or it must be because you were in local ministry, you know, or whatever. And so, you know, that I think is maybe what probably every author actually experiences, which is there's going to be you that seeps into that, into that writing, in ways that another author isn't going to be able to match, or not necessarily match as much as copy, or like, you know, because it's you, it's like you, who you are. Yeah.
We write what we know. They say to write what you know. Really, you can't help but write what you know. I mean, that's just
right.
You are who you are, and that is your art, you know?
Well, so here's another question. Okay. So you've got fun characters in your books. Yeah. I'm willing to bet a lot of them are based on some characters you've run across in real life in the music industry. oh gosh. I was just talking about, so this book that's the most recent book out, there's one of the reviews I keep seeing is, man, that bad guy's just really over the top, you know, and his name's Hammett Lamont. He's a kind of this halfway crazy or completely crazy filmmaker, cult leader in Los Angeles that decides to recreate the Christ story on film, kind of in his own image. And people say, man, that's just an over the top person to write. That guy's based on an actual guy that I actually, the names will be, I mean, I've had an interesting life and met a lot of interesting people. It's a lot of people. I'll get emails and say, people will read my book and say, dude, is that me? And I have to say, I lie and say, no, it's not. Yeah, right.
On,
no.
Of course not. But so no, my daughter, makes fun of me. She says I'm just a kind of a collector in life of oddball people, and so I attract people and like that, and I love it at the same time. I mean, life is an interesting thing to watch. Yeah. So,
well, I mean, I definitely, what tangential relationships I have with the music industry, I'm like, it was pretty easy to be like, oh, I bet he's run into some really interesting people and that have informed his, because I would say the same thing. Like, there are definitely people that I create characters that are based off of real people. And one of the characters in my first book was a church lady who wasn't one particular church lady, but a combination of like 3 or 4 that I knew in real life. And people loved her, as a character. She's not necessarily over the top necessarily, but it's one of those things where it's like, and she's not necessarily used for comic relief. I wouldn't say that much as she's just a really enjoyable character. Right. And they're very eccentric in her own ways and everything. And it's like, yeah, well, like, I knew people that were similar to that. There's not one person that she's 100% based on, but there's that's just the fact that, and I think probably most authors, if you pinned them in a corner, would admit that a lot of the characters they create are based on real people that they knew.
Oh yeah.
Good and bad, right?
Yeah, good and bad. Sure. Or situations or, things you hear, or, anything like that. Heck, I mean, you can walk through the grocery store and walk down an aisle and have like 3 novels, I think, I mean, people are just so fascinating.
Yeah.
So,
well, let's pivot a little bit to, from sort of the writing and the plotting and the characters and everything, and talk a little bit about, I love the idea. We kind of hit this at the top of peeling back the curtain a little bit on what it takes to do this for people who, are interested in publishing a book, especially traditionally publishing.
Yeah.
And so let's talk a little bit about all the other things you have to do as a writer once you finish the book. Because it's never, I typed the end, which you just did recently a couple of weeks ago. And then, hey, I'm just going to sit back till that book comes out.
And then it's, then it's marketing and it's editing and it's all the other nonsense that goes along with it. But well, if you want to talk about traditional publishing, I mean, I have I'm sure you're the same way. You get people all the time saying, hey, sorry, I'm not having an earthquake. I just bumped my table. So you get people all the time saying, hey, I've got a great idea and I want to publish this book and retire. And, this is, can you hook me up? And how do I talk to a publisher? And I think first off, the thing is you got to find an agent, right? I mean, agents are important. And I know that when I first started out on my road, I had a pretty wonderful story, which was I needed an agent. I knew I needed an agent. I wanted to traditionally publish. And so what I did was I just went on the internet. I wrote, I think it was 12 or 13 query letters to different agents that I was interested in. I did an internet search, sent them out, and I figured I'd do the traditional wait 8 months to a year to 2 years before I could actually, through perseverance and sweat and, get an agent. And I got a call in 2 hours from a guy and said,
oh, wow.
Jim Hart. And said, hey, I want to represent you. And I told him, well, man, first of all, you're like, well, what do you want? It's like, how much, this, that just doesn't happen. And so, when I actually told him, no, I need to really pray about this. I prayed and just felt the Lord impressing on me. Hey, you asked me. And, so he's been my agent ever since. And
that's awesome.
So that's the first thing. You got to find an agent, and then, and then you write the book, but then the editing process is never ending, of course.
Yeah. Let me pause you right there for a second and specifically point out or affirm your process of investigating agents and determining agents to actually query, which query meaning like you just send a quick introductory thing, be like, hey, I'm looking for representation. Here's what I write, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And, but I think I see often people, or maybe there might be a thought out there that, well, I'll just blast a bunch of them. Right. And what can be so true is that backfiring on you when you're querying an agent who's never gonna look at what you write because they don't publish in, or they don't represent authors anywhere close to that genre or that type of fiction. And so doing the research and narrowing it down and going, these authors are people that, I mean, like I even got to the point when I was like, you know, who do they cheer for in football? Maybe there's a connection point there. You know, we like the same team, because there is a relationship there, not just like, hey, you know, you're going to want this book because everybody's going to want it. I mean, I realize we all think that, but
yeah. This is a great new American novel, man. This is it right here.
Right.
Well, the good news with that is most agents on their sites are pretty specific about what they're looking for. So, I mean, if you take time to do the research, you can save yourself a lot of time, because they're not only specific of what kind of books they're looking for, but also what they want to see in a query. So, and so it's not like you're writing a blanket query, sending them out to, a bunch of, it's like, you got to kind of fine tune everything to the person.
To that person.
Yeah. At least that's how it was when this has been,
I think it's still
5
the same.
6 years. Yeah.
So editing, sometimes you're rewriting the novel, not entirely, but you're definitely doing a lot of writing in between the turning the manuscript in and, finalizing the copy. But let's talk a little bit about the additional things that you're writing. So you and I both, as Kriegel authors, we get marketing questionnaires, and we will write bios and back cover copy and all sorts of stuff. So talk about that and your experience with doing that.
Yeah, I think I'm probably like most authors. When you write the end, you're like, hey man, the next book's going to be really good, and you want to get on to the next thing, right? And you've already got ideas. I mean, I've got ideas down the road, and I want to get to them. But then you're stuck writing a back copy, which is, I think, honestly, back copy and synopsises for books are two of the most difficult things I've ever written. Those two things, I'd much rather write a novel than try to do that. And also, for some years, I've been a contributing writer to Daily Guideposts, which is a devotion. And those are really tough for me too, because you have to kind of start, middle, and end it in like 200 words, and so when you're trying to squeeze those things in, and I think it was Stephen King that said, you got to kill your kids. You have something that's really great and you don't want to take it out, but you got to do it because it's not going to fit. So all that little stuff. I mean, it's a constant press. And then you're into editing and editing. Like you said, sometimes you're rewriting big chunks, most of my books have not been that way. But sometimes you rewrite. I think I'm a little, well, maybe I'm not. I actually really enjoy the editing process when I'm working with an editor, because the way I look at it is I'm working with someone who, let me start with this. First of all, you spend a year or 8 months or however long it takes you to write a book. I know some authors that take 2 years to write a book, and nobody knows those characters. Nobody knows that world except you, right? So, I mean, I don't really share a lot of what I'm writing even with my family until it's over. My wife won't even read one of my books until it's in published format. She doesn't want to hear it. She wants to read it when it's done and enjoy it, and then so like I just got the on this new book that I wrote the end to a couple of weeks ago, I just got a letter from the editor that's working on it. Wonderful lady, she seems like, and to me, it's like a huge thing. Like, hey man, somebody else now is familiar with this world. They're familiar with these people that have been alive in my head for a year. And so that's the first kind of thrill for me to know that there's somebody else has eyes on it. And then secondly, editors are just very smart people that have done this for a long time and know a whole lot. So to me, it's like a great opportunity to learn so much more. Every editing process I've gone through, I've learned something. And so the way I'd look at it is, hey, this is great. I can, take what I'm learning here, take it into my next book, and just get a little better at the craft, because the craft of writing is never ending. I mean, there's always so much to learn. So yeah,
I have done the exact same thing where like I'll overuse a word in a manuscript and I'll be like, okay, so I'm on it, next one, and then the next manuscript is just a different word that I
Weasel words.
I'm like, I didn't do that one, but there's a brand new one.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I had one in my last book, the word just. I don't know why, but it seemed like it was every other sentence it was popping up, and I'm like, I got to get that out of there,
Yeah.
But I could not. I was like, I got into this thing where I couldn't write a sentence without having that word in there. It was the weirdest thing. But I know what you mean.
So there's a little bit of a highlight in terms of the author life is on those edits. I've been kind of the same way where I haven't had to rewrite huge chunks of a book.
Yeah.
I had a pretty big edit that happened in my second book in the middle, only because there was kind of a character that we decided wasn't necessary to the story in the place that they were. And so I kind of had to redo that section to pull that character out. But for the most part, the section still remained the same. That'll tell you how unimportant that character was to that section.
Yeah. Yeah, or the old, hey, why don't you combine these two characters because they're kind of doing the same thing,
right?
And you're like, but I love that guy, man.
Yeah, right.
And so, but it's you got at some point you got to come back and say.
So much of it too is like you overuse this word, like just do a search and get rid of them.
Yeah.
All right, well. Buck, I don't want to keep you any much longer. This has been super informative. Really great talk. And here is the best compliment I can give for the coffee is that it's all gone.
All right.
So great talk, great coffee. It was really, really good.
Good.
Very good. And so I was very excited to try that. And that's I now, not that I didn't think that, the Northeast is the coffee place, but
Northwest.
It's just Northwest. Sorry. Yes.
Northwest.
Oh, Northeast. No, please.
Yeah.
Northwest. Just affirmation. That's all. It's all that was, affirmation that's where I need to get my coffee for sure.
Oh man. Yeah. Well, I'm sure this guy will take orders online. So Wilder Coffee. Yeah.
He's
a good guy, young guy.
Link to how for you to be able to order coffee online as well. And so, that was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your brew with me.
Man, thank you for having me here.
Hey, tell us real fast where we can find you online. Now, we're not going to find anything about you, but we can find you online and we can buy your books. Tell us where.
It's pretty complicated. Buck Storm is my name. BECKSTORM. It's a real name. I didn't make it up. Buckstorm.com. Yep. Come to buckstorm.com. You can sign up for the email list. You can get books. You can find out all the information that you want to know, probably. So, yeah.
And you can find out more about my novels at my author website, andrewhuffbooks.com.
Nice.
There's links to all my social media platforms there. And I would say as well, if you, as a viewer, are like hearing about writers and what it takes to write and like hearing me review drinks, subscribe to my channel so that you can get notified of new episodes that come out. So
nice.
There you go. That's it for this episode of Books and Brew. Buck, thank you so much for being here. I hope one day maybe we can get together and drink some coffee in person sometime soon.
Yeah, that sounds fun, man. I'll look forward to it.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.